Welcome to Dan's Talks. This is Dan Rattiner, and I'm interviewing today Sofia Crokos, who owns a restaurant in Bridgehampton and also a events business around the world, as near as I can tell. And a remarkable amount of work, and I don't know how you find time to do a podcast with me. You are. Let's start out with talk to me about where you were born and raised, and then how that came to be what you do.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me first and foremost. And so I am co-owner also. My husband is the other half to the restaurant. So I want to give kudos to my husband, Chris, as well. And so born and raised in Brooklyn, and primarily grew up most of my life there. But I was a world traveler, I think from the moment I was born, it was in my soul. I basically, after years of being in fashion and so forth, I started an event planning company. And then basically later in my life, here we are, with our beautiful little Greek restaurant of a gem that we have out here.
Well, we're going to get to that for most of the
Yes.
I wanted to ask you one question about the event planning. What is the most remarkable event you planned that you can recall that stands out?
I have a handful of them. But I could say one of them was definitely a wedding that we had done in Turkey. And another one that we had done out here in East Hampton that really are the two in East Hampton that stand out, which I can't really discuss, clients and so forth. But I've been blessed with, the ability to really take one special day, whatever that day is, if it's a celebratory birthday, if it's the wedding, and really just create magic for them. And it really gives me so much joy because it's, I'm in sort of the world of beauty, and maybe it's not beauty meaning skincare line, but the world of creating beauty and really just connection. Because of that, I've been so fortunate to plan not just those three that I just mentioned, but so many other special ones too.
Were any of them in special locations that you recall?
Well, one, like I mentioned, was in Turkey, in Istanbul. One, and the other two were out in East Hampton. I can go down the list.
Private homes on a property, or were they?
Yes, private homes on a property, and actually one in Paris too, which really stands out because that was special. We were able to kind of be the first ones to get in after I think 4 or 6 year renovation at the Ritz Paris. So we were the first ones that did an event there when their doors opened up. So it was kind of special.
How did you come to decide you wanted to also open a restaurant out here? It would be Greek.
It's not that I really decided to open up a restaurant. I just kind of fell into the restaurant business, which I swore I would never get into. But Chris had, the space. He had 2 previous restaurants in that space on 95 School Street. He had a Spanish tapas, and then it segued into a Sicilian Italian restaurant. And then he thought he was done, and he thought he would sell the lease and be done with. And all of our friends out here, and even, wherever else, back home in Brooklyn, were like, why would you sell, the lease when you guys are Greek? You should just open up a Greek restaurant. And I said, hell no, I'm never going into the restaurant business. And then all of a sudden I'm designing mood boards for the restaurant. And it just kind of segued very organically. It almost like fell into my lap because my husband said, I cannot do this without you. This is something that I think, we should do together. And so we did. And here we are 6 years later. It'll be 6 years in July that we've opened up our doors. And our restaurant has become a massive, success. And gem for so many people. We have such beautiful, clientele, that come to us and repeatedly and have sent, friends of friends and even the one-timers that kind of stumble across and realize, wow, I didn't even know you guys existed here, just fall in love. And so I am thrilled that we have created something very special.
Well, we'll talk more about the restaurant, but one thing I wanted to ask you was this. The restaurant's located exactly next door to the Candy Kitchen, which is a legendary
Yeah.
place. And they have been since the start owned by Greeks who were Greek. And and they would, when in fact, School Street is called George
Stavropoulos.
way.
Stavropoulos, yes. I know it's a mouthful.
Town mayor for a while, and when he retired, and he brought people in who are running it today and near retirement from Greece. And I wondered if there's any connection between that family and your family.
Oh, no connection. The last name Stavropoulos, I grew up with because one of my dear friends from grade school is George Stavropoulos, but no connection. We just happen to be two Greeks on the same block, I guess. I mean, we're not next door. He's really on Main Street. We're on the side of School Street, and School Street, AKA George Stavropoulos way. And so, yeah, we're comrades and we love Gus and Gus is loves us too, and he supports us, and as we also support him too. So
one of the nicest things I think about your restaurant is in the afternoon, the sun, you have the tables out front, and because of its location on School Street, you actually get direct sunlight right through the afternoon and into the early evening. Tables and awnings out front. It's really beautiful.
It's beautiful. And we serve brunch on Sundays, but even like when we open up for 5 p.m., as you said, like into the early evening, the light is just, it's perfection. It's perfection.
It is. It's a beautiful spot. Are there favorite dishes prepared there that you want to talk about?
All of our food is delicious and it's very thought out, and I have my hand on that clearly because I'm a foodie and I love food, and I love my Greek food because this is what I know first and foremost. Of course, I love other cuisines, but this is really my core, and so we have a lot of specials that we do on the weekends, but our staples are like, our grilled fish that people love because we put that beautiful, lado lemon on top, which is basically an emulsified, olive oil with lemon and oregano and some salt and stuff. And our avnik laftiko, which is our lamb in parchment, which is not on the menu. We typically make, let's say, a dozen of those, if you will, as a special, and we kind of let the customer know that is also on the menu. And so that's our beautiful lamb shank that's wrapped in parchment paper with all the deliciousness that encompasses that. And from our dips, our famous dips, which is called pikilia, which means it's an assortment of dips that come either together or separately. Our chicken souvlaki. I can go on and on about, our beautiful dishes, and our moussaka is a big hit, which, is sort of the Greek version of the lasagna, which is obviously layered with, potatoes and eggplant and lamb ragu and the bechamel. And then for the summer, we just kind of source out some local, items that we can get our hands on, and we create beautiful, summer dishes that are, beautiful in color, because I love seeing color on my plates. It's not just a beige, plate that comes to your plate, to your table rather. And so, yeah, that's.
And you were born in Brooklyn, probably of Greek heritage?
Yes, both of my parents are Greek. They came over in the 60s, but they met here in New York. And so, yes, I am of Greek descent. Mm-hmm.
That's probably a lot of what you remember when you were growing up.
I mean, my first language that I spoke was Greek. My parents were very, they stuck to their roots, and they wanted to make sure that the kids also stuck to their roots. And that, I think, was probably one of the greatest gifts that they could have, given us.
And when did you first discover the Hamptons? How did that come about?
Oh, I discovered the Hamptons in my 20s, when my parents had bought a home out in Greenport. And so I grew up going there in the summers in conjunction with obviously mixing Greece in there as well. And of course, when you're in your 20s, you're like, at the time, the North Fork, as we all know, back in the early 90s or something, it was kind of dead, if you will, like very quiet. There was no action, right? Today is a different cup of tea, right? And so I was like, Dad, why did you buy a house all the way in Greenport when there's no life? I have to go to the Hamptons. And so I was making my way to the Hamptons and discovering the Hamptons. So I've known the Hamptons now for over 30 years. I guess that kind of tells you my age now a little bit.
What town did you find that you wanted to spend most of your time in?
I mean, it was Southampton, it was West Hampton at the time, because that's where a lot of clubs were. We're going back, in my 20s, I wanted, to, meet up with my friends and have a good time. So, and then I got to appreciate the North Fork as I got older and realized, wow, Dad made a great move. But we actually sold before the North Fork was right at that tipping point of becoming like a hot thing. And so, he sold the house, and now I've been out in the Hamptons for 12 years, because I'll be married 12 years this August with my husband.
What was your dad? Why did he choose Greenport? Was he a fisherman? Did he like?
No, because all the Greeks were going out, and it was Greenport was called Greekport, and so.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and all the Greeks were kind of heading out to that direction because they loved the farm, lands, and they loved, the fresh, produce in the summer, and the beaches, with the pebbles kind of reminded them of Greece. And so it was at one point, I guess amongst the Greeks, at least, we were calling it Greekport. So
wasn't there and still is, I think, a Greek restaurant that's very well known on the North Fork when you drive out?
Hellenic Cabins.
Yeah.
That's still there.
Yeah, and so talk a little bit about your events business in the Hamptons, and also mention about your husband's business. He has a retail store in Bridgehampton as well.
He has a liquor and wine spirit, a beautiful store that he's created. He had originally bought McNamara wines and liquors from the McNamara family, and lived with that space, created a very strong clientele with bringing really interesting products into the mix, expanded it as far as the library of items that he had, and then he took over a space next door and said it's time to rebrand. And I was telling him to rebrand for years, because people will call him, "Hey, you're Mr. McNamara. Oh, hi, you must be Mrs. McNamara." I'm like, no. And as legendary of a name it is out here, of course, nothing to talk bad about. I was like, Chris, you got to be your own brand right now. I'm like, you have built like an empire of, a plethora of like knowledge with your spirits and your wines. And so he wanted to keep it very simple. So he clearly, rebranded it to Bridgehampton Wine and Cellar. Bridgehampton Wine Cellar, excuse me. And so that rebrand happened kind of like right before COVID. And the expansion happened during COVID, meaning like construction and whatnot. So it was challenging, but he did it. God bless him. The place is magnificent. I'm not sure, Dan, if you've been there yet.
I've been to it when it was McNamara.
Oh, you need to go now and see it. It's a whole different cup of tea right now.
Do you remember the time it lasted for 8 or 9 years when Bridgehampton sort of threatened to become a French place? A lot of stores, and Pierre's was started at that time, but there was more. I think there were 3 or 4 French outfits in town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very strange and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that's so wonderful about Bridgehampton, and I think makes it such a great success, is what's happened right out in front at the monument, where they have restored these grand white old wealthy mansions right where it used to all be gas stations.
Yep.
Remember?
Yep. I remember gas station. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm glad that they've done that. And so it's definitely brought, it's brought the real estate and the whole sort of vibe of, Bridgehampton to another level.
Yep. What do you like to do when you're out here and you're not at the restaurant?
Well, depends what season we're talking about. Are we talking about summer?
If you like.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm an outdoor girl. I don't like to be confined inside unless, and I love my, interior of my space and whatnot, but I love being out, on the beach. I love gathering with people, with friends, in regards of summer, eatings. I mean, I do love to support other restaurants as well. We don't get much, a lot of time to do that, but I mean, if we can, we definitely go and visit some of our favorite spots.
Where do you go? What are your favorite spots?
I mean, I love the Beacon. My husband and I, we love the Beacon. We love Bell and Anchor. We love Durier's, both actually in Montauk and in on the North Fork, in Orient Point. We do love Dopo in Southampton and St. Ambrose. So, those are kind of like some of our sort of go-to places, even like year-round. Well, Durier's, of course, not anything on the water is not year-round. We love supporting our friend Eric Miller, that owns Rita Cantina, which is in East Hampton Springs. So yeah, we kind of, and then whatever sort of newbie that kind of pops up, we always like to kind of see what that's all about as well.
Do you like to go shopping, go to the beach, what are other activities you like to do?
So yes, I mean, I'm a big meditator, so I love to meditate. Walks on the beach for me are very sacred, whether it's solo, whether it's with my dog or my husband or, friends. I love visiting new farms. If, any farms that, might sort of pop up. I love going to farms because I love sort of seeing what's in the market. Shopping, I mean, other than really food shopping, I have a couple of my sort of go-to little places if I need to kind of shop, if you will. But I also just love, we do a lot of gatherings, if the time permits, because between my events and also the restaurant, we love to gather with friends, and, we love gathering them, whether it's in our home or whether it's, going to their house. And
do you have any plans for more? Are they anything new in the works?
Sorry, for what? I didn't hear that part.
Well, anything new in the works in the business that you're thinking about, or are you expanding in some way, or what do you in the future?
You mean for the restaurant?
For the restaurant, mostly.
Yeah. I mean, we've been approached numerous of times to come and open up other locations. Chris and I think about what that sort of looks like. We kind of go back and forth about expanding. It's a big, of course, step to do that.
Yeah.
I know that there's definitely some need of some Greek beautiful restaurants, if you will, to open up in certain locations that people have talked to us about, which we would be kind of like the only kid on the block. We don't mind, obviously, being with other Greek restaurants as well, but I think we've built something really special. And I know our customers see that because, like I said, there's such a huge repeat. And so I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of things that he and I have talked about, and possibly some product line stuff. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of keeping it very crypto right now. So
you go back and forth to New York, or are you almost primarily out there?
No, I go back and forth because my events, takes me to the city as well. So whether it's for appointments or whether it's actually for an event like we had this past weekend.
About the most recent event that you planned?
Well, we just planned a wedding in New York City, and it was a new location, which is right on top of Radio City. It's called Radio Park. So it's a new venue that opened up, and we happened to be the first ones in there for that one too. I think people, I don't know, the universe, God, kind of draws me to these sort of, venues that are either, coming off of a major reno, or, it's a new spot. So that was beautiful. It was for an intimate, about 80 people, which was lovely. We had the ceremony in another location. It was the sister property to 620 Loft and Garden, which again is up on a roof deck that overlooks the St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is beautiful. And then we segued into that new venue called Radio Park for cocktails and dinner. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we had a reception in that location outdoors. I was across the street from the church on the roof.
Oh, is it 620 Loft and Garden? Probably.
Anyway, thank you for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed it, and we'll see you at the restaurant.
Thank you, Dan.
And once again, we'll talk soon, and talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Be well.